Hello, and welcome to the What Are You Most Passionate About Learning, Creating, and Collaborating On in the 2014-2015 school year. I'm excited to have a roundtable that's really focused on the brand new school year and what we are excited and passionate about doing. Anything that's new or innovative or at the very least, just interesting that we want to think about how we might do together and collaborate on, as well as looking at how we are scaling the things that we've been doing for a number of years, and coming together and seeing what we can make of it. We do have a fantastic panel. Hopefully, we get a few more folks that we've invited to come and be a part of it. But we do have Austin, who I'm actually going to throw it to, and just ask, what is it that you are most excited about doing? What's the greatest opportunity that you see in the coming school year?
I think at our district, I'm a member of our instructional technology team at the district level. And just moving up from being one of the instructional technologists at a campus level. And so we're really trying to focus district-wide on having teachers kind of change their approach to instructional technology and less trying to force tools to work or trying to force their lessons to work with some piece of technology that's the newest thing, and instead ask the question of what's their goal, and then what technology do we have, or what technology can we get that supports that. That way the focus is still on the instruction and the technology is the support, instead of the way I feel like we've been doing things where someone hears about an amazing idea, a new thing, and then says, we have to use this, now let's cram and adjust and shape our lessons around the tool instead of the other way around.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, especially when you're looking at it from our perspective of integration, like the idea of that we are integrating a tool into curriculum versus making the curriculum the tool itself. So I'm excited to hear more about the ways in which you're looking at sort of pulling in resources, pulling in tools for a given purpose, and I want to think about what is the purpose that we want to see and to sort of expand out. So my name is Ben Wilkoff. I'm Director of Personalized Professional Learning in Denver Public Schools, and the thing that I'm most excited about, and I've been talking about it for a little while, but that I'm most excited about is this project that I've been working on called Project Cam Opener, where we're giving a video creation and collaboration toolkit directly to teachers to have them either video conference from one place in the district to another, or to think about the ways in which they capture their classroom, reflect upon it, share what they are doing. And it's become something that I'm really excited about. We've got a map of 85 teachers from about 65 different schools all across our district that are going to be taking part in this project, and we're really excited to see what kind of videos they're sharing and things like that. And I've had to think through things that I've never had to think through before, which is like student privacy on videos that are created in the classroom. I've had to think through things like, well, how do you manage 85 different YouTube accounts and sort of work through all of the implications of that? How do you make it so you can share publicly and privately and make it something that's valuable to everybody? So I want to make sure that we're sort of thinking through all of the different elements. But Austin, one of the things that I think about is we sort of play this game going back and forth on, is it about the tools or is it about the learning and the sort of the classroom practice? And we go back and forth a little bit on it, and I think the reason why we do that is it's like, all right, well, without the knowledge of the tools, how do you implement? And without the sort of knowledge of the pedagogy, how do you think about the tools better? Right. So where do you see the balance really coming from?
I don't know. That is a difficult thing, like you said, kind of the chicken or the egg. What came first? How do you start? I mean, I think obviously, especially if you're rolling out something new, you've really got to rely on the teacher or instructor, whoever's using it, having that, starting with that firm base in the curriculum, in the content. And they've got to be knowledgeable in it. They've got to be comfortable in it at a fairly strong level before they can even really get into some of the, how should we say, excitement that goes along with implementing a new tool or a new,
Keep going.
yeah, just a new technology tool. And so I think you have to start there. But then I don't know, we go around and around in our instructional meetings as well on the same thing. Um,
So how are you guys structured? I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about, the structure of how you are placed, because I'm always interested, like, where does ed tech live within a school district? How does it exist? Is it inside of an instructional core? Is it in the IT department? How do you guys function in that capacity?
Yeah, well, we have campus instructional technology specialists at all of our secondary schools. So we're a smaller district. We have 3 middle schools and we have 1 high school. So we have
Okay.
3 campus level instructional technology specialists, and then we also have a department of 3 instructional technology people at the district level. And so we support those campuses and those people, but we also at the district level help support our elementary campuses. They don't have a dedicated IT person. They have the tech apps teacher kind of leads on that, but that teacher is a full course load. So it's difficult for them to truly get much into the actual instructional technology portion. So that's a lot, and it's new. One of the people at the district level has been here for a while. Myself, I'm relatively new, and one of my colleagues who I think is joining at some point, not via video, but watching along, Rachel, we're new, and we're really pushing to be on the campuses more. Even though we're officed in the district, we need to be on the campus so that we can interact with the teachers directly, but also interact with that campus instructional technology person, because they know the specifics of the campus. They know better than I do what that exact campus needs and where the support is needed. So that's kind of how we're structured. We've got district level support and we have campus level support at the secondary level.
And so the structure that you've set up that I find really interesting, where you're actually looking to get into classrooms more. You're looking for the ways in which you can really focus your efforts within the schools themselves. I'm intrigued as to how you measure impact. How is it that you find that you are creating the most impact for the students that you are around and that you are with, or the teachers that you are with? How do you see that impact sort of coming together? And before we move on, I just wanted to, would you actually, we're having a little bit of bandwidth issues. Would you, I don't know if you see the bandwidth meter, the bandwidth usage up at the top. If you go down to like medium level, my guess is your video will kick back in, because we're having some issues with only getting audio. I don't know if you're seeing that too.
I'm not seeing it on my side, but I dropped it down to 2 notches. Is that any better?
We'll see. So hopefully it will show up, especially on the broadcast end. I just want to make sure that we're able to do this in the best way possible for the folks viewing. So how do you see impact when you're working with schools? What are the biggest impacts that you tend to look for and to take part in?
I think we're still asking that question ourselves. Like I said, being kind of having some new blood in the department, we're definitely looking into that ourselves as far as what tools can we use to assess that. Coming from the campus level, before I was at the district level, the way we kind of approached it was focusing in small groups with the teachers who kind of had the motivation on their own, that intrinsic motivation, and getting them to take advantage of these instructional technology tools we had, and kind of seeing how those impacted them. And they've also got the experience from the previous years, and kind of relying on firsthand teacher account to talk about, okay, well, this worked well. I feel like this part of this tool allowed my students to grasp this better, but they kind of got lost over here. So at the moment, we're really relying, or we have been relying, kind of on that teacher feedback. I could see student engagement increase in just about every teacher who chose to collaborate with instructional technology to get a tool or a resource involved in their classroom. Our district is, high percentage. Yeah, it looks like I just dropped bandwidth, but we're very high percentage Title I, and very our students are limited in the technology and the resources they have access to. So in some ways, we can get a lot of engagement, which leads to focus and more comprehension from the point of there's more time on task and there's more of that interest. Just sometimes we get a lot of that purely because we're using a tool that adds something new or is excitement, whether it's a tablet device or whether it's a great Web 2.0 tool that someone's integrating, or the BYOD in the classroom. So we get a lot of buy-in just from that. And I think engagement has been the thing that's been easiest to gauge with these instructional technology initiatives.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. So engagement is pretty powerful. I mean, we know pretty instinctively that if students are engaged, that their learning will that it will increase, and that the outcomes will increase, I should say.
Right.
But when we're looking at engagement with the tool versus engagement with the content, I think that's where the struggle is, because it's like, okay, getting a kid to play with an iPad or to hop on a Chromebook and get excited about a tool, that is engaging. Like, the engagement that's happening there is really powerful. But is it just the engagement with the tool, or is it the content and sort of getting to the curricular outcomes?
Right.
So I'm interested in thinking about the ways in which we differentiate between those two types of engagement. Have you come across ways of doing that, or ways of thinking about that?
We had an administrator who was very aware of that, and very aware of that potential for, are we getting this engagement because, oh, I have an iPad in my hands? Or are we getting engagement because I happen to have an iPad in my hands, but I'm really engaged in this lesson? And the technologies kind of just happens to be there. And he kind of emphasized this when I'm trying to think of the phrasing, when creating the lesson and developing it, really trying to focus again on how is the technology supporting the lesson, so that if you can keep that focus as much on the development of the lesson and creating that engagement, asking those higher level thinking questions. So instead of lots of simple whats and recalls, but more hows, and let's link what we learned here to this new thing that we haven't talked about, but let's find those connections. And kind of doing some of that, I feel like you get a little bit more of that, but because it forces them to concentrate on the content more. If it's that lower level what's and those recalls, it's easier for the flashiness of the technology to take precedence, because they're not having to think about the content quite as intently. So I think that was a big focus of his, and it seemed to make a difference in the amount of effort they had to put in to kind of answering these questions and working through things. If the content and the lesson required more of that effort, less of their attention was focused on just the fact that they had a cool device in their hands, if that made sense.
Oh, totally. And when obviously it's a little bit more difficult than just because it's like, oh, okay, so a child who is engaged in drawing but is drawing for the purposes of an assignment, we don't have to demonstrate that they are, engaged by the content or they engaged by the drawing. We just sort of assume that one is leading to the other. But with technology, I feel like we have this burden of proof that we have to come up with, right? Like, we have to show that not only are they engaged by the device, but they're also engaged by the content. And I think that to a certain extent, like, that's on us to be able to do, but it's also important for us to sort of think about the ways in which we show that, and the ways in which we take care of the teachers that are in our charge and that we are working with. So tell me about something specific that you're really excited about working with an individual set of teachers. Are there any projects that are coming up for you that you feel are sort of really ripe for collaboration or for thinking through?
Yeah, definitely. A huge thing that our district had over the summer, our high school library space was completely redesigned. Part of that was to fill the need for adding a couple more classrooms. It was a two-story space, and so they wanted to take advantage of some of that second story to actually come in and add some classrooms. And then they wanted to slightly change the area to allow our high school's grown exponentially. And so they kind of needed to rework some things that were kind of, for better or worse, oversights in the original building as far as flow and things like that of traffic, and through the hallways and stairwells and things like that. But so in the redesign, they actually chose to make probably, I would say, 3/4 of the space that is left at the library is an open, collaborative space. There are chairs and stools and some. There are benches along the wall. There are small kind of like study rooms that you would see in a college campus style, maybe 8 to 10. And then there's a much smaller area for the actual books. The main way they were able to do that without really decreasing collection volume was moving 100% of reference materials online. And so getting rid of stacks and stacks of encyclopedias and all of these reference materials, we were able to whittle things down so that we didn't really lose fiction and some of these other sections. But there's actually going to be a couple classes that space is their classroom. So there are going to be some teachers who teach 7 classes a day in this collaborative space. And one of those teachers is a tech leader in our district, wrote a grant, got a class set of Chromebooks, and so he and I were actually talking after our district convocation yesterday. We're both excited and somewhat anxious to see how we can use that space for a more collaborative feel. He's teaching an English dual credit class. So these are seniors who will be getting college credit for this English class as well as high school credit. And he's really wanting to completely get away from the direct teach model and have so much more be this collaborative, kind of leverage some of those tools. Google Classroom is something we're looking at. We're Google Apps for Education District. So leveraging, go ahead. Leveraging Google Drive. We both want to get Hangouts involved for the students that are in that, whether they're collaborating as a group just as a chat, or some are in one part of this collaborative area and they pop up a Hangout so that they can talk to someone else. I think that's where we're both, or our department is most excited about getting involved in for this school year.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is most intriguing to me is about the space that you're really taking on. So, you talked about the library space and how folks are going to use that space for additional learning opportunities and what that might look like. I think that's one of the places where we have the room for the most excitement, and yet we end up sort of paying almost no attention to space within these conversations. I was actually talking about, so within this Project Cam Opener project, the choice of like what our first videos might be was a topic of conversation, and a number of us were talking about, well, what if we just did a tour rooms and talked about the choices that we were making, and the reasons why we grouped chairs together, or the reasons why we created a makerspace over here, or the reasons why we made the choices that we did for student learning, and thinking about the space itself as a really conscious choice. Because I think that, you know, by default it's like, okay, well, we have this equipment, these desks or these tables, and we have to do something with them, and all of the classrooms end up looking very, very similar.
Right.
But we don't have to do that. We can think of new and different ways of doing that, and thinking about the other spaces in the building, i.e. the library, looking at other spaces that are sort of typically used only during some parts of the day, but
Right.
could be used in all parts of the day. So I'm interested in that sort of that space conversation. How are your teachers thinking about space in their classrooms?
You know, obviously it's going to vary so widely from teacher to teacher, campus to campus. I think we do have a lot of teachers who think about those things. I know from the campus I came at most recently, our ELAR department was really strong in getting away from this perfectly aligned desks and rows, all pointed towards the front of the classroom. And they really went with a much more open layout. There were maybe 6 desks in their classrooms, you know, for classes of 25 to 27. And then the rest of it, you know, there were some kind of loungy type areas where they'd have like a couch or some other kind of non-traditional classroom furniture. There were some tables, and then there were just chairs. You know, students can pull up a chair, a group of chairs, and be around 3 or 4 other students. Some students preferred to sit on the floor and lean their back against the wall. They kind of would create their own library spaces with bookshelves, and some of them would do it in a way that blocked off a corner of the room, so those students who kind of want, during that writing time, are less collaborative, maybe outwardly and outspokenly so, can instead kind of go hang out in some of those areas and feel like they've got kind of that solitude that they may want and need for their writing. So I think they really led on that. At the campus. I've seen other content areas, but that really jumps out as teachers who thought about the space and what they had available, how they could use it, and those kinds of things.
Nice. I really like those decisions to be made at the teacher level, and the ability for them to sort of organically, as they need a different space, making that space,
Right.
and then even at the student level where they can choose where they want to sit, what they want to be working in.
For mobility.
Right. No, that's huge. So, Philip, you just joined us. Thank you. I've been bugging you for a couple of minutes because I wanted to make sure that your perspective was made available. But who are you? Where are you in the world? And what are you most excited about in the coming school year?
So, hey, hello, Ben. Yeah, everyone, I'm Phil. And before I click through, I didn't know it was a Hangout on Air. So, in the background, you actually hear my daughter playing with her friend.
That's even more fun, though.
Yeah. I mean, like the, you know, probably the last day of being able to wear a tank top for a while. You know, because next week we get into we jump back into the full tilt of school. So I'm most excited, you know, this question, oh, what do I do? First, I'm going to quickly pause myself, and I'm just going to ask the girls who are laughing really loud to be a little bit more quiet. One second.
I love it. It makes me so happy when there are children in the background, and it's like, all right, well, you know, we can have that too.
So, so I'm the instructional tech specialist for a K-12 school district out here in PA. And for me, and I've spent this whole summer traveling around all over the Northeast doing consulting with all these schools that are going one-on-one with Chromebooks, and a lot of faculty that are like deer in the headlights. Like, oh my God, what are we going to do? All these kids will have devices. And in my own school, we've adopted a powerful learning management system. We're getting ready for a BYOD/one-to-one. And what's resonated with me all summer is I can't imagine a more exciting time to be an educator. That we suddenly have these tools at our disposal and this wealth of resources and information to totally redefine the learning experience for kids, to personalize it, to empower ourselves, to stop being sages on the stage and be meddlers in the middle, and really like sort of a catalyst for learner empowerment, for learner connectedness, and for learner exploration. And so, you know, this journey all summer long with working with all of these different communities and empowering those teachers, I'm like chomping at the bit. It's one of the few times that I haven't gotten to this week where I'm like, oh my God, where'd the summer go? I can't believe I have to start. I'm really excited to get back into it with my faculty, with the kids, and just like roll up our sleeves and start that whole process of discovery. So
I think it's interesting, right? You're, you know, you have not only been in your own school, but you know, you've been around to all of these other places that are doing a lot of different things. What do you feel like you've gleaned the most from that experience that you're going to be bringing back? I mean, it sounds like it energized you, but like, is there anything concrete that you saw out in your, you know, your consulting work, in working with these folks that are going to one-to-one? You know, what are you going to bring back that you're most passionate about?
So there are a number of things that resonated with me. One, and these I'm going to list them not in priority, right, just as they occur. One, leadership is everything. So do you have leaders that are not autocratic but really believe in distributed leadership, that are willing to roll up their sleeves and spend a day in professional development with their faculty? Like, that's huge. Are they willing to change their own practice? Are they willing to give agency to their teachers? So that's big, and I've seen a lot of different school districts, and where you don't have a leadership that is doing that, a leadership that's absent from that process, that's more bureaucratic or autocratic, you don't have a lot of buy-in from the faculty, and if you don't have buy-in from the faculty, you're not going to have buy-in from kids, so there's not going to be a lot of transformation. So that culture of leadership is huge. The other piece that is really important is professional development for faculty, but one that's led by mostly the faculty in the school. A lot of time, you know, you bring in an expert from outside. I was brought in as the expert from outside.
Right.
There's a lot of expertise right there, and too often we're dismissive of the talent that's right there. It's like, it's hard to be a prophet in your own land, right? And so schools that have that culture of leading from the middle, letting those faculty that they have on staff step into those leadership roles, that's really helpful. And the third, that's probably the most important, is kids. Our kid voices are part of this change process. And if they are, right, if I come to a workshop on a staff development day, and there are kids there from the school participating in it, behind the scenes, doing a lot of the work, then that's huge, right? Because then you're going to really get that sense of ownership and responsibility from the most important stakeholder in the group, and that's the learners.
Yeah. So, Austin, it sounded like you had a thought. Did you want to comment on the idea of student inclusion and their voice, or on the distributed leadership component? I'm really interested in both of those.
Yeah, I was just echoing some of the things that Philip said, where it's so easy, and it's kind of the typical model to bring in that expert from outside. And we talk about that when we go into schools and deliver trainings, that we're perceived as the expert, but there are so many experts in the room on various things, parts of it you didn't consider for a training or a professional development, and just making sure that you're aware and open to those and allowing those moments to happen, and even applying that when you're in the classroom too. Philip mentioned some of the teachers freaking out. Oh my God, we've got these devices, which is amazing, but oh my God, what am I going to do with them? How am I going to use them? And so we're really trying to push our teachers to be comfortable in not having to have all those answers or feel like they have to provide those, and allowing the students to step up, because you give a Chromebook to a kid for 30 minutes and they've got it figured out. I mean, and taking advantage of that, not always just in a play kind of atmosphere, like here is this, play with it, figure it out, but if you're struggling with something, allow a student to come up and help. Allow them to teach you for a moment. And then what was the second one? We were talking about experts. Students involved in the kind of the training and planning. We've had a new CTO recently in the district, and that's a big initiative that he's pushing, and I think it's a great one. Our district technology advisory committee is going to have student members. This high school library space redesign had student members on it. I think that's important. The ideas that we have from the perspective of educators are often great, but some of the ideas that we think will work and are golden, you turn around and you listen to student input and you realize those are great from our perspective, but they're not meeting the needs of the students, or they're not going to meet that interest need or that engagement. It was really nice to hear Philip echoing that as well, that need for student involvement and input.
No, that's absolutely huge. And, as we're thinking about the ways in which we sort of approach different types of students, different types of teachers, as we're looking at it, in our collaborative document, and actually, if this is one of the first times that we've been able to use the Showcases app, but I do have the link to our collaborative notes doc, as well as if you want to receive a badge for today's event. But if you click in there, Rachel Calabretta has really focused her attention on brand new first-year teachers. She says that they can easily become overwhelmed just by the day-to-day. Adding technology initiatives may increase this. So I'm wondering how you guys think about the brand new teachers. And I had this this conversation earlier this week about the idea of first-year teachers, don't know a different way of teaching. And that's one of the reasons why I feel so comfortable in sort of teaching with technology, and was because the first year I started teaching with blogs. And, it was like, I don't know any different than this. This was like my first experience was having a real audience and a real purpose for my kids' writing. And so how do you think about that idea of getting teachers where they are, but when they're brand new? Philip, I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
So yeah, I do. But first, I'm kind of like, I'm having that Google moment where you're like, what's this Showcase app he's talking about? And then I'm just like, well, that's really fantastic. And then I clicked on the receive a badge, and I'm just like, what's P2PU? And now you're issuing with Mozilla Open Badges. I'm like, Ben, you've been busy this year. And I must have missed the post where you were talking about all this awesomeness, because this is like, I've been looking for this for a long time. So post Hangout, we're going to have a conversation.
I love it. I love it.
Because that's just so many layers of awesomeness, and I'm trying to think about. Well, anyways, so back to, if I understand your question correctly.
Yeah, first-year teachers.
First-year teachers. Okay, so let's just this all throughout the summer. I'm working with teachers in my district and other districts where there's that look of school year's coming, of a lot of new stuff here, and there's this look of anticipation and excitement and anxiety on the faces of veterans and new teachers. So one of the things is building their connectedness, because that veteran teacher has all of this wisdom on management and engagement with students that you learn on the job. You can't be taught. And then there's that new teacher who's coming in and like, fast clicking through and it's like, oh yeah, I get this tool. Oh yeah, I get this tool. And they're much more likely to adapt to integrating new tools, but they don't necessarily. So for example, flipping your classroom, that teacher's a whiz. They can go ahead, use Edpuzzle, and start doing it. The whole idea is, well, if you're flipping, well, then what are you doing with your classroom time? What are those? Oh, I'm going to do project-based learning. Have you ever tried to manage project-based learning? What kind of scaffolding do you need in place? What kind of culture do you need to establish first in your classroom before you can start with open-ended projects? When you start giving kids choice, learners choice, how do you structure so that you have a little choice and then more choice, and then the kids are getting more and more empowerment and agency, but scaffolding that. And so if you can facilitate connections, really a mentorship that's two ways, right? So, and I like it better as a peer coaching model. And this is, again, where leadership can come in. So leadership can step in and say, we're going to get some release time in the first quarter of the school year for you to take 2 periods, and you're going to go just watch that other teacher. Veteran watching newbie, newbie watching veteran, right? Just be in each other's room, nothing structured, nothing to report, but a lot that will happen through osmosis and organically generated conversations between the two of you. So
that's huge. So the concept that you're sort of bringing up is, how do we make mentorship just a part of the way that which we learn, right? How do we make both formal and informal mentorships a bigger part of this? And I think your original comments about just increasing the connectedness of the learning that's happening, right? It's not simply enough to say you now know how to use this tool. It is, who can you connect to that will help you throughout the year? How do you encourage folks to get connected to one another? Austin, I see you nodding your head. What are you thinking about the ways in which you tackle the issue of I guess both, right? Veteran teachers who may not have ever used these tools, and first-year teachers who have never taught a day in the classroom.
I mean, on the note of first-year teachers, we actually just this summer designed our own, in the district, our own kind of new teacher support system, basically what would typically be called a mentorship program. And we really kind of asked some of those questions. We just felt like none of the typical prepackaged programs tend to work, or they didn't work in our district, we felt like. So we wanted something written by teachers, administrators, district staff, and we really tried to incorporate some elements that would give that connectedness, and even outside of the campus, and outside of the classroom, and outside of the content area. It's so easy, we all know as a teacher, to get completely absorbed and even isolated, whether it's not just your classroom, but maybe your PLC, whatever it is. So one of the elements we built in was that the mentor of a new teacher should not be in the same content area or grade level, so that they're getting a different perspective. The content support is coming from the PLC. We have a really strong PLC model in the district. We really wanted to make sure that it was a relationship that was providing something outside of what they were already getting from their team, which is the grade level, and their PLC, which was content. We just really wanted that extra perspective. And then the second element we tried to build in, or that we built in to try to kind of address that connectedness, is a social media aspect. We're basically going to use an Edmodo where mentors and mentees from the entire district can post questions and answers, give feedback. So a mentee, a new teacher, can hear feedback on an issue from someone at a different campus. You know, a second grade teacher can hear feedback on a question they asked from a high school science teacher. So kind of bridging some of those typical things where it's easy to get isolated, and just add as many different perspectives. There's so much knowledge, you know, spread around the school district. We really wanted to make as much of that available as possible to those new teachers.
Austin, I'm going to jump in just here with a little, just an idea. Here in PA, we launched a program, relaunched a program that had died because of lack of funding. is this our Keystone Technology Innovators Program. We launched it again, brought the community together again, and we've started that community in Edmodo much of the same way, connecting people.
Mm-hmm.
The feedback people are getting is that Edmodo, I get the notification, but then there's too many steps to get back in.
Yeah.
We're migrating over to Google Plus because I can get that notification, even if it's via email, and then I can actually respond via email. So that's just my 2 cents there on platform ideas.
Can I ask you a quick question? And
yeah.
Before we get too sidetracked.
Yeah.
Not actually. You know what? Let's touch base after. I don't want to hijack too much. Just asking specific questions about that.
You know what, I actually think it's important. So the idea about how we make these decisions, right? We're making these very sort of intentional choices about platform, about the way in which we introduce things, because I think to a number of points here, like we all have either initiatives or communities that have died, right? Like that are no longer in existence. Sometimes it's for funding, but sometimes it's due to perhaps to the tool itself, perhaps even to the lack of support from the people that are working with it. And so I'm interested, you know, what are you thinking about? What's that question that's burning that you really would like to think about that would help you make a better decision about the program that you're looking to you know, be excited about and expand this year?
I mean, more that just kind of how he said the specific issues they had with Edmodo.
So yeah, and I can jump right in. So like speaking of what Ben was saying, your goal is to create a space that's supportive, inclusive, that distributes leadership. That teacher can ask a question. So, you know, Ms. Smith asks a question. Well, it's a question that 50 teachers have.
Right.
Put it into that space. We do this all the time in social media. You know, a person posts something on Google Plus. They post a question to like the Chromebook EDU community. I have that question too, right? And so I just watched the discussion happen. I may or may not jump in, but I've been watching that discussion happen. I'm collecting those resources. I plus somebody to thank them, you know, for giving me that feedback. And so what was happening is that, you know, when someone posts something in Edmodo, I get a notification via email, but I can't respond via email. So I have to go out to Edmodo. I can load the app on my phone. It takes a while. I see it there. It's on I got the notification, but I have to wait till I'm back at a computer. And then right there, it's going to really die. 90% of the time, I'm not going to follow up.
Yeah, barriers to responding.
Yeah, life gets in the way. Whereas in Google Plus, I can respond via email, right? So I get that notification. I can respond right there. And then later when I'm at our computer, I can respond more meaningfully, share resources, etc. And so that it's just less of a barrier, and that's meeting that cohort where they want to be. They want to because otherwise it's going to die. It's going to be the same few people having that conversation all the time.
Right. What part of Google Plus? To be honest, I haven't used Google Plus a whole lot. Is it like a group? Is it? I don't know what's the phrasing.
It's called Google Plus Communities, and Ben and I can put into the document, you know, resources on how do you learn about setting up and getting started with Google Plus Communities, and you can join your local Google Educator group, which will be one of the communities, and you can ask your question. You know, what are best practices in getting teachers to start using Google Plus Communities? They will share with you their Google presentations, their video. I mean,
right.
Today you'll have all the professional development resources you need. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that's the way to go, and we have strong support in the district for Google. So hopefully that won't be too.
Then it's a natural, and it's one less username and password and everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to drop in so there's one document that I've been curating on how-tos for Google Plus communities. So I'll put that into the Showcases app as well, and that will help both hopefully you and the folks that are watching. So let me pop that in. And yes, we can talk about the Showcases app and P2PU. I've been very, very excited about the inclusion of this, because I kept on having it anytime I'm doing a Hangout on Air. I was like putting in fake questions that were really links to things, so that other people could see them. But you should be able to scroll down to the third item and then open that up, how to create and be a part of an online community practice, and it's specific to Google+. So we're rounding towards the end of our conversation here, and I really appreciate there's so much excitement and passion that I hear from both of you as you're sort of ramping up. And I would agree with Philip. This summer was non-existent to a very large extent, but in a lot of ways just made me so excited to be back and to really have some new opportunities that really have never existed before. And I see a huge opportunity to collaborate and to sort of get back with some of the folks that we were working with last year, and what is this year going to look like? And I think there are some really big questions out there, and I think that's where I'd like to leave it. Is what are the biggest questions that you have about this current school year that you think could be something big, but that may or may not transpire? And I'm gonna sort of model a little bit. The things that are the biggest questions for me. One is going to be Google Classroom. It isn't a fully featured LMS. It doesn't do a lot of things, but there are going to be a lot of people that are going to try it this year, and I think we're going to learn a lot about what it can and can't do. That's a big, big question out there for me. I'm also seeing this very interesting dichotomy between Chromebooks and iPads at the moment, and I am very intrigued as to how that is going to play out in the coming school year, both in terms of Chromebooks that are going to get better and better and that we're going to have more management over and the ability to do more things with. But also, I think that Apple's they're not idiots. They're going to figure out, what is it that is so valuable to the Chromebook set, and even to a certain extent the Android making inroads into the tablet market and things like that. I have a big question about what that's going to look like in the coming year. And I think on a personal level, how is it that we make a lot of these tools available to non-early adopters? We are really, really good about getting early adopters to buy in and take part. And that's like my biggest question out there, is how do we make these kinds of tools, these kinds of opportunities for professional learning, that it isn't just the people who are already in the coalition of the willing. How do we make it more available for folks that are outside of those bounds? So, Austin, I'm going to throw that out to you. Like, what's the biggest question mark? I mean, we've talked about all the opportunities, excitement, things like that. What's the biggest question mark for you in the coming school year?
I definitely echo some of yours, kind of on the general education community at large, especially related to Google Classrooms. I think we're all really interested in seeing how that develops and how it gets used, and who and if how many people get involved and really use it past that. Oh, this is cool. I create my class. Oh, I just didn't get around to using it.
Right.
Which we've all been there, done that, guilty, and myself included. I think within our district, what I'm most anxious to see the answer of, hopefully see an answer by the end of the year, we're really trying to start. We have a desire to start coding and programming K through 12. Like, we want every single student K through 12 to have the opportunity to have that, which currently pretty much none do. We don't have that. And it's a big push, but there are so many questions in the air of how are we going to do it? Is it going to be a club, after school? Can we create a course? What are we going to use to support that? Who's going to teach it? Are kids going to be interested? How can we build interest? So many questions related to that. And those are the ones I'm most interested in seeing, what we can make happen and what it ends up looking like.
Yep. Thank you so much, Austin. Philip, what are your biggest questions out there for this coming school year?
God, so there's too many great questions, and you hit on a lot of them, right? Some of them are, to me, sort of their side curiosities, like Google Classroom, how will it evolve? What is iTunes U going to do? What kind of decisions will folks make about, I think a lot of us are big fans of, I want tools that are platform agnostic only. And so that like, unless Apple figures that out, right, there's not that they provide something that's just so superior that I'm gonna limit myself. I mean, at the end of the day, when I have those devices, I'm not limiting myself. I have access to everything once I have one of those devices, but those are kind of luxury devices that are out of a price range of most districts, where they don't want to enter in that kind of into a program where they have to sustain that. But I see that sort of as a side. My bigger, it's not so much questions, or yeah, it is a question. It's a how-to. So this is where I'm stuck. There are so many incredibly awesome tools that are emerging all the time, and I really want to empower my teachers and students to be able to use them in creative and innovative ways that we can't expect. And so I have, this typical example: kid goes to Drive, they're in working in Drive, they click, they want to add something to Drive, and we have a contractual agreement with Google, but that third-party app they're adding doesn't have a contractual agreement. They want to do an add-on. I trust New Vision Schools. I don't have a contractual agreement with New Vision Schools. So suddenly, we start adding Doctopus, right? What's happening there? Or, Mozilla Popcorn Maker, I can sign in with my Google account. That's great. It's one less username and password the kid has to know. I don't have a contractual agreement with any of these companies. So what happens is, for what I'm really interested in doing, and I want to reach out to Digital Promise and work with them, is I want to do micro-credentialing for developers and tool providers, so that a developer can go ahead and get a badge that says, EDU certified. So essentially, that if you go and add that tool, like Video Notes, to your Google Drive, that Video Notes is providing that software as a service, but it's not collecting any data on the student. And that if they can then show Digital Promise, this is how everything works, then they get verified with that badge. And that for an administrator and a teacher, I just know, like, go ahead and sign in with your Google account or add anything that's EDU certified. That I, as a Google Apps administrator, can have a little checkbox in the domain console that says only allow them to add EDU certified. Like, to just make, because in this day and age, like, this is, it's going to become an issue. And I would rather be proactive than reactive and say, all right, now we have to shut it all down because of the lawsuit that happened. And we're back to square one with tools. We're saying, oh, the only tool we're going to use is, Office Mix and Microsoft OneNote, and be as creative as you can within that little box, and no other tools for you. So that's my biggest question: is can I be an agent to help that happen this year, and reach out to other people who are doing that kind of credentialing. We do all this credentialing for staff and for individuals. Can we do this kind of credentialing for companies working in the educational space?
I think that's a really great question to be asking. How can I be an agent of change in the area that I would like to? And I think that area is ripe for some change. I do think. I mean, one of the things that I'm most excited about in the district that I work with is actually the legal department is always trying to find ways to say yes. And so I just met with them about, can we host classroom video on YouTube, and their answer was yes, but let's do it right, and let's talk about how we make that work for our students and our community members and things like that. And I think that there are ways in which we work within our own institution to be more open and transparent about our processes, but that we can usher in some change using some of the tools that you're talking about, credentialing, handshakes, you know, the ability that we have to, whether it's a contractual agreement or at least just an understanding that we are all working from the same playbook. And I think that we have some real power to do that in a lot of different ways. So I guess that's the challenge for us, right? That we continue to collaborate and work from the same playbook, and to continue to work together to create something this year. So I really appreciate your time today, and I really appreciate the conversation. So I hope everybody has a good school year. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.